everybody can hear me with the mic from the room, correct? Good. Welcome to our March meeting of the Larchmont Mamaroneck Local Summit. I'm Elaine Chapnick, the president, and welcoming you for a springtime morning where the thoughts are coming, at least this morning, to thoughts of water. We're going to hear more about that from our program, and I'm going to turn it over without further ado to Lorraine Walsh, our program chairman for this morning. Where is she?
Right, yeah, thank you. Well, good morning. As you can see, today we're trying a new format for the summit. We've gone digital. But we have, instead of a moderated Q&A like we usually do, followed by audience questions, our guests are going to talk us through a visual presentation about sewers in Westchester. Yay! Yay! the problems, how they, oh, I didn't, did we clap? Oh. Sorry, hold on. Let's start over. We're trying a new format for the summit today, so instead of the moderated Q&A followed by audience questions, our guests will talk us through a visual presentation about sewers in Westchester. Ready, everybody? Yay! Yay! Okay, good. The problems, how they affect us and our environment, and what are some solutions. Once the presentation is over, we'll open the floor for questions from the audience. And then that brings me to another change for today. As you can see, we have two microphones linked together. One is connected to LMC, and the other is to amplify our voices in the room. And so during the Q&A with the audience, we will not bring the microphone around. You raise your hand to ask a question. We'll call on you. You say the question. I will either repeat or paraphrase, and the guests will answer. Okay? And that's just for ease and, you know, not wasting time running around the room with a microphone. So, and now I'd like to begin, because we have a long presentation, and introduce our speakers. So, all the way over on my right is Tracy Brown. She's a recognized leader in clean water advocacy, has been president at the environmental protection NGO Riverkeeper since 2021. During her tenure as president, she has helped expand Riverkeeper's iconic water quality monitoring program, grown its fleet of boats engaged in patrol and science work on the river, spearheaded the passage of key environmental legislation, and helped lead the formation of the Westchester Coalition for Clean Water, which is a group of organizations committed to working together to make sure Westchester County's waterways are clean and healthy. Tracy was also an architect of New York's sewage pollution right to know law. Yes. And I'm sure most of you already know Nancy Seligson, former Mamaroneck Town Supervisor, and are aware of her strong decades-long commitment to the environment and especially the Long Island Sound. Over the years, she has been in leadership roles at Sustainable Westchester, Save the Sound, the Westchester County Environmental Management Council, and the Westchester chapter of the League of Conservation Voters. Nancy is currently the New York co-chair of the Long Island Sound Study Citizens Advisory Committee, and she's also co-chair of the Westchester Coalition for Clean Water. And so I think you're going to start. I'm going to turn the microphone over to Nancy.
Thanks, Lorraine. Maybe start. It's really nice to be here at the summit again. It's been a while, and welcome everyone to our very exciting presentation today. I am, as Lorraine said, representing Westchester Coalition for Clean Water today, and I'm here with Tracy Brown, with whom I have worked for a very long time on Long Island Sound and water quality issues. So we'd like to show you a little bit about Westchester Coalition for Clean Water. Thanks, Faye. Our mission is to restore and protect clean water in Westchester's waterways for all community members now and into the future. And our vision is for all waterways in Westchester to be clean and healthy, trash and sewage free, and flood resilient within 10 years. And now we're going to talk a little bit about the problem, but I'm going to turn it over to Tracy. She's going to talk about the problem, with our sewage infrastructure, why we think it's important, how it affects you, and what we think we can do about it to fix it.
Just that, and over a bagel, yum. Sorry. So thanks for coming out today to talk about this really kind of ongoing chronic issue in Westchester that we have organized, as you heard, a coalition to really try and make some countywide progress on this sewage pollution problem. So these are all images of sewage impacts from within the county. And why should we care? How does this impact us? So when we have untreated sewage getting into the environment, we are creating exposure for our wildlife and our habitats to disease-causing pathogens, and also to the other things that are not treated within our wastewater treatment plant, but that are in our waste stream, which include, among many other things, pharmaceuticals, which come through our bodies and are not processed in the treatment plants, a variety of other toxic chemicals, because you're talking about your laundry, your cleaning materials from your home, industrial cleaning materials that go into the waste stream, and of course solids also, all kinds of debris. And how this impacts our environment is in the form of degradation of habitat, loss of habitat. The materials in wastewater, for example, can create the decay of marshlands. It also, the pharmaceuticals and materials within the wastewater affects the life cycle of the marine life, and specifically kind of reduces reproduction, especially when we're looking at high levels of estrogen from birth control impacting our wildlife. And then the nutrients that come in the wastewater trigger algal blooms. So this is food for algal blooms, and when we have algal blooms, we start the cycle of the blooms growing, and then when they decay, they take oxygen out of the water, and the low oxygen levels lead to fish die-offs. So folks on the sound will recognize these periodic fish die-offs when you have low oxygen areas, and then there's some predation, like a striped bass comes in after a bunch of menhaden, and they start to use a lot of energy to get away. There's not enough oxygen, and they can die. So this is just top level on the environment, and then top level on human health. Exposure to untreated sewage is exposure to disease-causing pathogens. Those can take the form of viruses, bacterial infections, and parasitic infections. I won't go into those in detail over breakfast. But let's just say, well, we won't. I'll skip it. Okay. No commentary. We also know that they cause beach closures. So beach management really is weekly testing for one thing: fecal bacteria levels. That's how our beaches are managed. They test, there's a threshold of acceptable levels. If it goes above it, they close the beach. If it goes below it, it stays open. We have proactive beach closures in Westchester County and elsewhere because we have such a chronic issue of our sewers being inundated and overwhelmed by rain, that we know every time it rains, sewage is going to be getting out into the streams and creeks that feed and flow out by the beaches, and those beaches have to be proactively closed. So generally you'll see the beach that's closest to a creek or a stream, that's the one that closes first and longest, because that's a conveyance for our leaky sewer lines. We also have shellfish closures. So, and these are the things that, shellfish is the type of thing that you lose historically, that you kind of forget you even had. But if you go to like Greenwich or the North Shore of Long Island, families can go out and harvest clams and bring them home and eat them. And we haven't been able to do that in Westchester for a generation because of our sewers. Because our sewers are contaminating our shellfish. And forget the commercial harvest. I mean, that's, very much long gone, although it could come back. And it has come back. That is a success story in Long Island and Connecticut. But also the recreational harvest. Okay, so I mentioned beach closures. Just to give you a sense of scale, we went and looked at the numbers just for last summer. So we had 49 beaches that were closed due to high fecal bacteria levels last swim season here. and then 4 for the algal blooms, which are also related to the sewers. So how did we get here? So this is a map of the county. I have a closer map of your community, but I just want to give an overview. The colored shapes are sewer districts. The white area is where it's mostly septic. So that's part of you're getting into the Croton aqueduct system, part of the New York City drinking watershed, less dense development, and most of those communities are on septic. But down in this part of the county, it's all municipal sewer lines. We have 13 sewer districts that feed to 7 wastewater treatment plants run by the county. And one of the reasons why we have the problem that we do have is that the ownership of the collection infrastructure is segmented. So a lot of people think when we have sewage contamination that we mostly become aware of when our beach is closed, that it's the plant. You know, what is the plant doing? Why isn't the plant treating the sewage? Well, that's only a part of the problem. Very often the sewage isn't making it to the plant. We do have some issues with some plants not being able to manage the volume of sewage. But really, again, this is part of cracked pipes and groundwater and rainwater getting into those lines when it rains and overloading those plants. But for the most part, a lot of the failures are in the collection infrastructure. So the collection infrastructure has 3 owners, and only one of them has a permit and is actually required to inspect and proactively maintain that infrastructure, and that's the county, and that's the mains that connect directly to the plants. But before it gets there, we have our private property owners, like this business and all of your homes, where you own the lines from your home to the curb, and then you have all the 42 municipal entities in the county, all the towns and villages that own the pipes from the curb to whatever the nearest county main line is, and then the county from the main to the plant. So really, it's from the homes and the businesses to the county sewer lines, where by and large, you're not looking at your sewers unless they're broken. There's not proactive inspections, and this is where we're having a lot of failures in the system. That's a big part of the problem. So when the Clean Water Act was passed in 1973, we had a big infusion of federal dollars to get all of us kind of on sewers, unless you're in a community that stayed on septic systems. There was a lot of federal dollars. We built plants, we upgraded plants we had, and then that money really dried up in the 80s. And there was kind of a big quiet period of decay and neglect. And then through groups like the folks who are here today and our NGO partners and municipal leaders, we worked to get the sewage right to know law passed, which I'll talk a little bit more about later. That's a notification law to finally give daylight to this issue. And then through starting to generate that data and more awareness that we had a chronic sewage pollution in New York State, we were able to get some state funding in place. So we now have grants. We started out just with loans. Now we have grants that communities who are willing to admit that they have a problem and step forward and say, we have a problem, you know, please help us. There is funding, and your very own Steve Otis has been a great champion of getting that funding set up, and he has public events that you can come to learn more about how to apply. So we do have money flowing. The state is giving out, I think it's like $500 million a year max in loans right now. That's been going on since 2015, 2016. But New York State does have a documented backlog of $80 billion in water infrastructure. So this is the state comptroller's number, and that's a combination of wastewater and drinking water, but most of it's wastewater. So we have a long way to go. Okay, so zooming in locally, just to acclimatize you all to where you live. So we have the Mamaroneck Sewer District in yellow here, and the New Rochelle Sewer District. I'll also point out this is Blindbrook, and that's Portchester. So these are the communities, and the sewer districts, you know, the sewers mostly rely on gravity, the pipes, so it's kind of like its own little special watershed. They look more like a watershed than a town. boundary, but they're not exactly always the watersheds, but they're pretty close to what the natural watershed, aka drainage basin, looks like. Okay, so over here and in most of the county, thankfully, you all have what we call separate sewer systems. So a separate sewer is where your sewer lateral goes through one pipe to your wastewater treatment plant, and then your storm water goes through another pipe. And the storm water pipes are just directed to the nearest creek, stream, or river. They just kind of come off the street and they flow into the river, or sometimes directly into the Sound or the Hudson River. So this is kind of the best practice in modern technology that we have. Separate systems, but if your systems are really old, like ours are in Westchester, in some cases, some of our lines are 100 years old. Most of them are 80 or older. You'll get cracks in these pipes because they're not being maintained. And when you have cracks, you have what we call infiltration. So when it rains, you'll get rainwater come in, the groundwater can rise up. We all know there's a lot of flooding in this area, so if the groundwater's getting in your house, you have cracks in your sewer lines, it's getting in the sewers, and it's going to your wastewater treatment plant instead of out to your storm system. And then we have inflow where we'll have sometimes lines accidentally plumbed into the sewers that should be separate. So this could be downspouts off of homes, this could be some pumps or just stormwater that's been misplumbed. Now on the Hudson side, unfortunately, we only have some separate sewers. We have actually in Yonkers, where the biggest treatment plant in the whole county is located, we have a combined sewer system. So a combined sewer system looks like this, where you have your stormwater and your your stormwater and your sewers going into one pipe. And when it's not raining, there's a weir and it kind of flows just sewage because there's no rain to the plant. But when it rains, the rainwater also gets into that system, and it is designed to tip over the weir when there's too much combined sewage and rainwater, and just divert directly untreated into the local waterway. So sometimes a plant that has the system like Yonkers, and many of the plants in New York City, this is a huge issue in New York City. They dump 21 billion gallons of combined sewage into the waters around New York City every year. That's the equivalent of filling the Empire State Building 72 times.
Oh my God.
With sewage and stormwater and dumping it into the Hudson. We only do that for Empire State Building's
Right.
work. Right. So good on us.
We're winning.
Okay, so this is just another way of showing some of the impacts. This is data from Save the Sound that does the monitoring over here. We have a Save the Sound person joining us today. David, if you want to hear more about their program, and then Riverkeeper doing monitoring on the Hudson side of the county. So basically what our two NGOs do, and others as well, but we're the ones doing it here locally, we're measuring the same thing, the fecal bacteria level, like the Department of Health does, and then we're telling you, in this case we'll focus on the Sound. The green ones are passing swim criteria, the yellow ones are failing swim criteria, and the red ones are failing it by 10 times or more, a magnitude of 10. So you can see, I mean, generally the beaches are like smartly situated in places that have clean water. The Department of Health, is smart, and they do studies to place beaches. But there are some beaches that suffer more than others, and the tributaries where sewer lines are leaking through the storm drain system, the stormwater system, tend to do worse. And it's similar for us on the Hudson side. So this is weekly. These are both summaries from last year. This is kind of the whole year round up into some figures. And you can see these on SaveTheSound.org or Riverkeeper.org. Okay, and then my last way of expressing to you the situation is, I mentioned the Sewage Right to Know law. So the Sewage Right to Know law requires that whenever a community knows that there's sewage getting into our waterways or onto the street, just kind of a sewage discharge in the environment, they have to report within 4 hours to New York State, and then New York State has a NI alert system, their emergency alert system, that then sends out notifications. So any of us can sign up for that, and I really encourage you all to sign up for these. You can get a text, you can get an email. I put the URL there. We're happy to follow up. If you all give us your email, we'll include that in a follow-up message to you. I would say, first of all, when I started doing this work and realizing the extent of sewage getting in the water, and that people like me who love to swim in open waters didn't realize that was what made beaches open and close, and then realizing that there could be a sewer main break. In my community, I swim in Sleepy Hollow, and there would be a main break, down the road in Terrytown getting into the river, and no one had to tell me or my friends who were in the water. And that kind of blew my mind. So we worked really hard to get this law passed, and it's been transformational in terms of awareness and advocacy to get investments in our sewers. So just last year, what was reported in just Westchester County was 92 incidents of sewage overflows. Now, more than half of those were the combined sewer discharges in Yonkers. But we also had the manholes surcharging, and this is a great illustration. This is another way that you can see that sewage gets at the storm drains. It comes, surcharges out of an overfilled sewer pipe through a manhole, and then just flows right down to the curb. And then this goes right into, whatever, Mamaroneck River, Blindbrook, the shore, wherever that system is connected to. So overflowing manholes, breaks and spills. And then this is the last one I'll point out that's important. So I mentioned quickly that at the treatment plants, they can be inundated by the extra rain that comes into the system in a rain event. And what that causes at plants that aren't designed to just discharge through a combined system, what they have to do is, in order to not have the plant be inundated, they have to quickly move that water through the plant because it's beyond their design size. So they do a partial treatment, and that's what this is, where they basically bypass the main treatment and they screen it and throw chlorine in it and just push it out to the waterways. Most of these partial treatment incidents happened at the Mamaroneck plant. The Mamaroneck plant is having a real problem with too much rainwater getting in, and when it rains, it often is doing a partial treatment discharge. And so that's one of the places we have to drive some resources. And then again, sense of scale. So the breaks and the spills and the overflows, 6,100 gallons. The partial treatment, mostly from this one plant, 357 million gallons last year of partial treatment. So that's the sewage and the rainwater combined that's going through that plant. Our combined sewer system in Yonkers, almost 1 billion, 865 million gallons last year, for a total of 1.2 billion gallons. And as I said, that's for Empire State Buildings.
And I'm just going to give us a little example of what happened last week here in our area. On March 6th, the Mamaroneck Sewage Treatment Plant had a wet weather event, which means it was raining, and they were unable to treat all of the flow going through the plant, so they had to partially treat it. And it lasted for 24 hours. That's 5 million gallons of partially treated sewage going into Long Island Sound, right off of Harbor Island Park. On March 7th, there was a pipe break at the sump pump at 1 Flint Avenue in Larchmont Village. And that was only for 15 minutes. This is what was reported. And that was 14,000 gallons of sewage that went into a storm drain and then right out to Long Island Sound, or Larchmont Harbor in this case. So last week, 2 events, 5 million and 14,000 gallons of partially treated or untreated sewage went out just in our little area. And like Tracy, I also like to swim in open water. And so I was very excited about the sewage right to know law. And I certainly tell everyone I know that in our area that I would consider, before jumping in the water, the weather situation in the past 24 or 48 hours in our area. If it has rained significantly, I would say it's not a good time to go jump in the water.
Yeah, it's sad, but true. So you take those, what was it, 59 closed beach days, and then you add all the days for 24 hours after the rain event, and that basically doubles those beach days. So I also put up here volumes underreported because, in truth, for the sewage right to know reports that we used to put this together, only 40% of them, less than half, shared the volume. So 60% didn't report a volume. So this isn't an exact number. But this is another thing we can do, is really encourage the wastewater operators and owners among us to report with detail on volume when we can. Okay, I think I'm passing it to Nancy now.
Thanks. So now, how can we fix our chronic sewage problem? I have some ideas. Let's get working on our sewers now. Here you see a lovely photo of the tower at the Mamaroneck sewage treatment plant, which everyone always thinks is the most lovely building in our community and asks me what it is, and I'm happy to tell them it's a sewage treatment plant. And you see some construction going on a sewer on the other photo. About 7 years ago, the village of Larchmont and town of Mamaroneck applied for a grant from the state, along with the village of Pelham Manor and the city of New Rochelle. We were awarded a $5.8 million grant from the state of New York. And that allowed us to start working on our sewers, because we knew, especially in the New Rochelle sewer district, those are the 4 municipalities that flow to the New Rochelle sewer district, that we had a lot of work to do. So could we go to the next one? Here is a beautiful photo of what was found when we did a movie of the pipes in the village of Larchmont. This is part of a sanitary sewer evaluation system study, and all 4 municipalities did this. We're not singling out Larchmont in any way here. We all had pipes that looked like this. These are not pretty pipes, but this is what was happening in our neighborhood. And as Tracy mentioned, many of our pipes are 80 to 100 years old. And you know, they are underground, so it's hard to remember about them, and it's hard for people to focus on them. The good news is that we spent a lot of money. All of us have spent a lot of money, meaning the municipalities, to fix these pipes. And these are the lateral lines that connect from the homeowners to the county's trunk lines or main lines. In the past 7 years, the town of Mamaroneck has spent over $6 million. That's a lot of money to fix our pipes. And the village of Larchmont has spent over $2 million. The village of Mamaroneck has been a separate entity. They weren't in this little consortium of the 4 communities because they had some other extraordinary issues there. And so they were working separately on theirs, and also have been funded and spent a lot of money on their sewers as well. We should feel good about this. We should feel proud of our communities that we are taking care of these. It's been a long time coming, and it needs to happen on an ongoing basis. You can't just fix them once and say, okay, let's ignore them for another 8 years. We gotta be on them all the time. So, we at Westchester Coalition for Clean Water think there is a really good solution, and that's to create a unified county sewer district. A county sewer district would provide great efficiencies of scale. It would allow for consistent and proactive action, and we would have a much more focused way to invest in our entire sewer collection system. Some of the benefits of a countywide system would be the basic economies of scale. You're talking about, instead of every single municipality looking at their little pipes, you'd have a systemic ability to govern all of the pipes and the ones that are connected. So not just municipal pipes, but the county pipes as well. You'd see far fewer failures of those pipes, and you would have cleaner water as a result of that. And we know that we'd be saving money, because right now, you have every single municipality doing it on their own in whatever fashion they do it. And we know that if we put it all together, we would gain economies of scale in making those things happen. That's why the 4 communities of Larchmont, Town of Mamaroneck, Pelham Manor, and New Rochelle got together and said, let's do this together, because we knew it could be cheaper to do it together. We got way better contracts to do the beautiful movies of our sewers and to do some of the repairs as well. So what are our next steps? We are trying to, as a coalition, this Westchester Coalition for Clean Water, speak to community groups and raise awareness out in the county. This is not an easy thing to do. It's a smart thing to do. We think everyone on the county level knows that. County Executive George Latimer was in favor of it. County Executive Ken Jenkins is in favor of it. Catherine Parker, our beloved county legislator, is in favor of it. And we all want to see it happen. But it needs a real push. It needs real support to make it happen, because it's not easy to do. 2 of the things that have to happen in order for this to move forward is that we need to pass state legislation. The county does not have the wherewithal legally to do it on its own without passing state legislation. And we need companion legislation in the county as well. So we're talking about the legal department. That is a big hurdle too. But most importantly, right now, we really want to see this pilot model consolidation move forward. And that's with these 4 communities. Our 2 communities, Town of Mamaroneck and Village of Larchmont, with the Village of Pelham Manor and the City of New Rochelle. We've done the work. We know the condition of our pipes. We know exactly what has to happen, and we've all worked together to do it together. We're saying, use us as a model. Consolidate our districts so that the New Rochelle Sewer District becomes one district, meaning the county's pipes, the municipal pipes, and obviously the private pipes are going to stay on their own. There's not much we can do about that. But it would go a long way to showing how this can be done, that it can be done well, that we can save money, that we can have cleaner water. And here we have a great picture of the Swim Across America, out in the Sound here, and of course our Manor Beach. And we want folks to not question water quality. We don't want you to have to question water quality. We don't want folks to have to worry about when did it last rain, how is the sewage treatment plant doing, and are there any pipes broken in my community? So we need your support, because we want you to talk to your elected officials, local elected officials, county elected officials, and state elected officials, to know that you support improving our sewers. I always say that this good sewer system is the hallmark of a civilized society. Ask the Romans. They did a good job. So we're asking you to support us, meaning the Westchester Coalition for Clean Water, and support yourselves by mentioning it to your elected officials. Join our mailing list, because we'll have information about progress and what we're doing. And please sign up for those sewage alerts. It makes you aware of it. It brings you into the picture and understands what's happening. We are not here to blame anyone or to say that someone isn't doing their job, but they need support to do it. And so we want to support the county in order to consolidate the sewer districts, and we want to support the municipalities in joining that consolidation and improving their sewer pipes. And now we would like to open it up for questions.
Thank you very much. That was wonderful presentation. So, does anyone have any questions? I'm sure. Go ahead.
I live over on Cleveland Point Road, unfortunately on the water. I wanted to know, what things can be done to improve the capacity of the Mamaroneck plant? Or is it just that's all it is? I remember finding washed up on my shore these little, they look like hospices years ago, and I was told that was a mistaken outflow of something that is supposed to help with the sewers, with the processing of the waste. So I'm interested in that. And second, you haven't talked about septic. There are in fact people in this community on septic, and I wondered if the consequences.
Thanks. I'm going to have to paraphrase that. Two questions. The first is, can the Mamaroneck treatment plant have its capacity increased? And he raised the circumstance where there were plastic things floating up and washing up the shores, you know that. And then there still are some, very few, but there are some septic, even down here in the South County.
Okay, the easy one first. There's 88 properties in the town of Mamaroneck that have septics. There is new septic technology. We would like those people to improve their septic systems. It's a technology that removes nitrogen, the nutrient, from the effluent from the septic system. And then New York State is providing grants to help homeowners actually do that. So that's a great opportunity. It's really a big push on Long Island because, believe it or not, most of Nassau County is not sewered, which is hard to believe. And of course, Suffolk has like 400,000 septic systems. The Mamaroneck sewage treatment plant has been upgraded. It is built for a capacity, I think, of 35 million gallons a day, and on a very rainy day, it can be double that. So the question really is, how do we get that excess water out of the sewage treatment plant rather than increasing the capacity of the plant, which is on a public park and would take a lot more room to be able to do that, and that's an issue. And the little pasta wheels that came out of that plant several years ago was a malfunction of the plant. They were trying a new medium in the plant, because the basic way a sewage treatment plant works is you put media in there and the little critters and bacteria glom onto it, and that takes the bad stuff out of the water. And they were using those pasta wheels because there's so much surface area on there to remove nitrogen. So unfortunately, there was a malfunction of the plant, and oh my goodness, those pasta wheels ended up everywhere. But you know, we have regular beach cleanups in the town of Mamaroneck and throughout the whole area, and I haven't seen a pasta wheel in a very long time. I'm happy to say. Sorry?
Plant that those help.
Yes, but they had that malfunction where they went through an area that was not screened, and that was the problem.
Yes, go ahead, Jeff.
I have a two-part. One, is there any measurable impact that the new laws, like the Village of Mamaroneck has for a sewage discharge certificate when you sell your property, has that had any decrease in the volume? And I suspect that those types of laws are going to other communities. Now, I know Mamaroneck and the town were two of the early ones, and Rye is now, and is it going to other communities? And the second one is, ever since I've been a kid, I've been astounded that rainwater and street water go directly into our harbors. And if you look at, and when I was a kid, people used to rake their leaves into the sewer, right into the traps right there, and people dump stuff in there, and they don't realize that car oil, everything else goes, and it goes directly into our harbors. And Mamaroneck Harbor has a problem because it doesn't flush as well, since it's a long harbor. And the third part is, when you do discharge, where does it discharge? Does it discharge in the sound or in the harbor? for the overflow.
Okay, so just to repeat the three parts of that question.
Sorry about that.
I don't even remember the first one. I know the second one was about stormwater, the issue of stormwater running straight
Where they
out.
could put filters.
Where-
It was about
yeah.
the laws.
And
Yeah,
then
And the change in laws.
the change in laws for
the-
sewer inspections when you sell
Right.
your house. And the last one is the,
Where does it
Outflow.
discharge?
where does it go out? The stormwater.
No,
Or the
sewage
sewage.
overflow.
Oh, okay, all right, there you go.
Okay, the change in laws in the town of Mamaroneck, village of Larchmont also, right? In the village of Mamaroneck. We were some of the first communities to implement that when you sold your home, or when you bought a home, it had to be inspected to make sure that you did not have any of the legal hookups that Tracy showed that can cause extra water, storm water, to go into the sewers. Like if your sump pump or your downspouts are connected to a sanitary sewer pipe, that water's going straight to the sewage treatment plant. We don't want that. That is not sanitary water, that is storm water. And you cannot believe the volume of that. You might think it's nothing, but if anyone has a rain barrel and you see the volume of rain that fills up that rain barrel off of your roof, it happens like that, a very small amount. So yes, it helps, Jeff, but it's slow. You know, think of how many times a house actually transfers. It would be good if we could do a little more proactive, work on that. So that is helping though. And that also brings awareness to people about it, which is great. 2, no one should rake their leaves into the storm drain, okay? Into the catch basin, thank you. And stormwater, you're right, goes right out into the harbor, which is terrible. What was the?
And the sewage.
Where do they,
You do
where
filter.
does
Oh,
the sewage out?
So, sorry?
Yeah, you could do more filters.
Sewage
Where
outflow.
the, partially treated.
So the
discharge
outflow
pattern.
for the Mamaroneck sewage treatment plant is way out in the sound. It's like, I don't know, half a mile out or something. It is not close to the beach.
It's not at the end of that jetty?
Yeah, you can see
No.
it on nautical charts.
Yeah. No, the jetty that was just repaired was housing a pipe that helps it get out there, and was closed off to the public, but now I hope that it is open to the public. I don't know if it is, but it's a beautiful renovation that, we're long waiting for. Okay.
Go ahead, Rod.
It's what's important for all of us to remember. We're about to get our town taxes, which has the county taxes on it. One of the line items there is with special districts, and particularly for the sewer districts. It's the only area, the only item in the county that is going up dramatically year over year over year. And for us in New Rochelle and in Mamaroneck, we're looking at 8% or better for the last several years. Prior to that, when the New Rochelle plant was upgraded, it was significantly more than that. Fortunately, in the last year or two, we're not the worst district in terms of increases. There are other districts around the county that have had double-digit increases. It's also important to know that the county puts somewhere between $60 and $100 million of money into the sewer districts, into the plants, every year in terms of capital budget. The question for us to be asking is that money going to the right places? And is it going to a strategy that's going to help us get where we want to go? The other thing is that pilot that we're talking about comes out of a project that was done in the last 2 or 3 years from the county that did a consulting study about how do you consult, what's the best way to consolidate the sewer districts.
Right.
And so all of this is important. It's just important to remember that you're paying money, and the question really is that money going to the right places? The last item I just want to mention, for all of us just to think about, it is certainly possible in the next couple of years, maybe not in this administration, but in the next one, for the EPA to come back and say you've got to treat the stormwater. And that's a real issue. That's something that we all should be looking at as we look at where are we spending our capital dollars? Because right now, those capital dollars, by and large, not 100%, but by and large, is going to simply replace worn-out equipment doing the same exact things as the old equipment was doing. And that's a question that we really should be asking. Is that where we want $100 million of capital money being spent year over year over year?
Right, thank you. I'm going to summarize that question as basically, we have to pay attention to how the money, both at the county level for the districts and at the municipal level, is being spent. And is it being spent wisely? Is it being spent with an eye to the future? And I think you can talk a little bit about the study that.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you for that question. So one of the things that's going to make it so hard to create a countywide sewer district is that you're moving the taxing from a tax that right now comes from your municipal tax bill, your city, village, or town, depending on what kind of a municipality you live in, and it's going to become a county tax. So the concern is, among elected officials who don't want to be accused of raising taxes, that the county's going to take over the fiscal responsibility of maintaining this collection infrastructure, and then the municipalities won't take that tax burden away from the local residents. Instead, they'll say, oh, well, now we can use this money that we've been collecting and we can, fix that traffic light. We can, get another police officer, whatever the local needs are, because everybody's, working in a financial scarcity situation. So it's really important in this transition that there needs to be a commitment from the towns to acknowledge that they're lowering a tax, but really because it's moving to the county, so the county has the coverage to do this without getting lambasted for increasing taxes. There will be an economy of scale savings, and the study that you mentioned, so the county legislature approved money to hire Arcadis, which is a engineering firm that has probably more than half of all the individual contracts to do the individual maintenance within our 42 municipalities, which for the most part is wait until something breaks and there's a disaster and then go in and do an emergency repair. It's a very expensive way to run anything. All of us who are homeowners know this. It's really not the way to manage your property. So Arcadis has all of these contracts, a couple other engineering firms have some of them, and they did a report to assess what this looked like financially. And their report, which we are still waiting to be publicly released, but it did confirm that there will be cost savings, there will be better performance at the plants and treatment, and there'll be better environmental outcomes for all of us in our communities and our quality of life. But it is some of this nuance that you're rightly pointing out. These are the places where it's going to be really hard. It's a governance thing. The devil's in the details, and we heard from our last county executive, George Latimer, who's a supporter of this idea. In the universe of all the problems that we're dealing with in the county, we need to hear from the public. We need to hear that they're worried about water pollution, because if there's not, pressure to do better on this, there's many simpler things to spend our money on that are ribbon cutting quicker wins than this really complicated governance transition that we are championing. So that's why we're here today, to answer these questions and get folks on board.
There's one more issue that you've got to deal with in terms of taxing, and that is that not all the municipalities are in the same place from a repair perspective.
Yes.
So the issue, unfortunately, is if you're in a municipality like ours that has spent a great deal of money to repair your infrastructure, and there's another municipality that hasn't spent that kind of money. Now, if you on one day choose to consolidate it, what's going to happen is the people who have spent the money already are going to be burdened with fixing the other municipalities' infrastructure.
That's an anxiety. Thank you for raising that. So the question was, I'll just restate it.
And that's real because that impacts the politicians who don't want to be impacted, don't want to
Yes.
have their
No.
constituents impacted by the cost of maintaining or fixing someone else's problem.
Yeah.
Okay, so the gentleman, just to restate it for the folks on television, raised the concern that communities that have invested in their sewage infrastructure will be burdened with the cost of communities that have not. So definitely there's a big variety, spectrum of state of good repair. And we know that that is a concern, especially of elected officials. So the way that the sewer consolidation legislation that Nancy mentioned, that'll be state law, is set up, there will be a firewall when communities come in so that individual communities' capital investments and their capital needs to get to a state of good repair will be isolated to those individual communities. They will not be spread across other communities that don't have that need. So there are reports and checkpoints as you enter into, I forget what the term is in the legislation.
Zones of transition.
Yeah, there are these kind of periods of transition where each community has to get up to an acceptable level of good repair before they're fully engaged with the economics of the countywide sewer district. Because that is one of the main reasons. If that was
That's
the
right.
case, we would be dead on arrival. It would never work.
Right.
So we absolutely will not be having it structured that way. And I'll just mention proactively, another issue people are concerned about is that it's going to be mandated, and it's not going to be mandated. This is going to be an opt-in sewer district. So we'll create the sewer district. The 4 communities that are in the New Rochelle existing sewer district will be our pilot, and then other communities will be able to opt in, and there will be assessments, reviews of infrastructure, reviews of capital, reviews of labor. There's a whole number of things that will have to be assessed and equalized, so no one is picking up the bill, and it's actually equitable.
I'll just pick up one other thing that Rod brought up, and that was the stormwater. There is always the threat that we need to treat our stormwater, although the financial burden of doing that just seems impossible. So what their effort really has been is to reduce the amount of stormwater. And that's some of the things that we're talking about all the time, about using green infrastructure like we did at the town center, where we have porous pavement and porous pavers, so that the stormwater is not rushing off properties and into the storm drains. And that is really a big push, and has been, and is generously funded by the state if the communities want to do it.
Yeah, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Ms. Urban with Assemblyman Steve Otis's office, so I just want to say, listening to all of this, as Steve wishes he could be here, because he's been such an architect of a lot
Yes,
of the
absolutely.
stormwater and clean water. So just to add a few things, right now the Assembly is working on adding $100 million to the $500 million clean water grants that they have for the state. And there's also, I think, statewide, since the water infrastructure program has been started in 2015, I think statewide there have been $3 billion that has been awarded to over 1,000 projects. And in Westchester County, I think it's something like 53 projects have gotten about $135 million or so. So the state money is there, and we have, every year we do an annual clean water workshop, which Nancy has been a panelist, and Tracy and David kind of safe us out. So we'll be doing that again in probably April or May, where a new round of funding will be available from Environmental Facilities Corporation, and then the Department of Energy Conservation Committee. So these are all state resources that are going to be available, and we'll make sure that everyone gets included, all the municipalities. But and the green infrastructure is something that's very, important.
Thanks,
Just wanted to say that. And Steve will be working with you as a good partner, as you know.
Yes,
Always. Yeah, Steve Otis has been great on this issue. And another 100 million, added to the 500 million will go a long way. And I assume that these events will be in his newsletter that
Yes.
gets sent around,
Yes.
so everyone can see where it is.
Yeah.
You're passing the email list around?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Yes,
And I
it's
think,
also-
I
it's
think,
also 9 o'clock.
it's 9 o'clock, so we have to
Right.
wrap it up.
Right.
And I want to thank our guests, Tracy and Nancy, and I need to, I could have introduced Faye over here at the end, Sue. She's working with Riverkeeper on this particular project, and she prepared the slides for us, so that's great. Thank you so much. And,
Can I say one other thing?
yes, you can say whatever you want, Nancy.
I just wanted to thank everyone for coming today, and that those of you who haven't said hello to me personally are not allowed to leave until you do, please, because I miss all of you, seeing you.
Thank you, thanks for coming.
I too want to thank all our panelists for this wonderful presentation. I want to thank the people that have responded from the audience for their great questions and statements, and thank all of you for coming. Next month, I hope to see many of you back. We're going to be hearing from our 2 superintendents from the Mamaroneck School District and Rhinebeck School District on April 8th. So thank you for coming and hope to see you next month.